Hello and welcome to this episode of the Health Bridge podcast. I'm your host, Holly B. Today I have Dr. Amy Albright on to join us. She is an expert and trailblazer in human potential, bridging business strategy, neuroscience, health, and spirituality. By integrating cognitive, emotional, physical, and spiritual intelligence, she brings a revolutionary approach to human evolution. The power of Dr. Amy's own extraordinary brain and energetic capacities have helped countless individuals and businesses achieve massive success while operating in greater alignment with their core values. As CEO and co founder of Holon, Dr. Amy has partnered with Dr. Drew Pearson to create groundbreaking programs that combine advanced neurofeedback technology with transformative personal and spiritual development practices. Through its proprietary methodologies and extraordinary tools of technology, Holon measures and modifies brain activity via bespoke protocols that optimize performance, resulting in rapid growth, freedom, clarity, resilience, and potential for visionary leaders. Dr. Amy also offers professional speaking and facilitation for aligned organizations worldwide. This is a really special conversation with Dr. Amy. She brings up her belief that when we end up with autoimmune conditions, the root cause is because we are actually living outside of our innate intuitive abilities, that we have lost connection with who we truly are on a soul level. We've lost the ability to recognize that we have self-authorship of our own reality. And we are stuck in the very cognitive experience of the world around us. And we are trying to be everything, right? Especially if you are a woman listening to this. We are so designed to be perfect, to be nice, to be caring, to take care of everyone. And it creates this disconnection from actually who we are because we're so focused outside of ourselves. And so that is a huge part of what we talk about in this conversation is how to begin to reconnect with that higher self, with the God-given ability of your intuition, of your higher purpose. We talk about just, being addicted to our own thoughts and beliefs, the beliefs that we've internalized that we may or may not even recognize that are patterns in our life. We talk about the challenges on a real life level of autoimmunity and the shifts that need to be made to detoxify ourselves and to shift our living patterns to promote health versus stay with the status quo. Gluten came up in that conversation. Changing our nutrition is a big one, right? And then we also talk about we haven't been brought up feeling a sense of safety in living our life full out for our passions and our purpose. We're going through this power struggle within ourselves, and sometimes that manifests as autoimmunity. Sometimes it might manifest in other ways, relationship struggles, etc., work problems. But that we can slowly learn to shift these things. We can slowly make changes, slowly make recognition that we are bigger than we have been taught we are. And we can take slow steps to learn to embrace that. And in embracing that, we can experience a whole different level of health and life and fulfillment and joy. If you are struggling with autoimmune conditions, or if you are someone who seems to be getting stuck in some cycle that just keeps showing up over and over, this is a great conversation for you because it may help you identify some deeper patterning within yourself that you hadn't recognized yet, and give you some great steps towards making some shifts in your life in order to overcome these patterns. So I will let us now dive right in to this conversation with Dr. Amy Albright. Dr. Amy Albright, I am so excited to have finally met you. We were just chatting before you jumped on about what a small world it is and how we've had several different connections. And I actually know somebody that works for you. So I'm just super excited to dive in. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Holly. I'm really excited to be chatting with you too. I feel like we have so much in common, not just with people, but with the way that we see autoimmune and life. And so I have a feeling it's going to be a really fun conversation today.
We were just chatting before we started about autoimmunity. I didn't realize that you had an autoimmune background, but I want to talk about the the idea of coherence. And I came to a realization, I don't know, a couple of years ago where I realized, okay, the standard definition of autoimmune is when your body is attacking itself.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've translated that into is actually there's just an incoherence going on in the body. There's things that are firing, but they're not, your systems aren't talking to each other. And so it feels like you're under attack. That's not the actual intent of the body. It's just that the communication pathways have been frazzled. So I'd love for you to jump into like, how do you see coherence, and how does that relate to the autoimmune struggle and the relationship of body and mind?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a deep and philosophical one. And the more that you dig in, I think that there's just more and more here. And I ultimately think that people who are on an autoimmune journey are being asked to ask, or they're being asked by their path to ask these sorts of questions, right? So there's an incoherence inside of the body, maybe between organs or kind of on a molecular level, on a cellular level, but there's often also an incoherence in the mind. So the person has that element potentially of not being their own best friend, attacking themselves, overworking, shaming themselves internally, whether they're conscious of it or not. So that's another level of incoherence. But I believe, though, that there's another one that maybe is even less talked about, which is coherence with the all that is. When we believe ourselves to be a separate cell, not connected to everything else that's out there, we're inside of a state of illusion. And that illusion basically breaks down our being as that single person within the greater whole. So I know that the oneness connection can be a very abstract or, feels too big to even dive into construct, but it can be translated into the feeling of all is well. And I think that when we look at what's going on with folks that are struggling with autoimmunity, it can be incredibly difficult to feel all is well, because a lot of the times we don't feel well, right? We don't know how to get our lives feeling good because of disharmony, perhaps from the body, but maybe it's actually disharmony that's kind of bigger than that, like in our family structures, work pressure, whatever it is that's going on. So when we think about coherence, we want to think about it. I have a brain background, and my organization, we work with neurological health and all of that. So definitely we want to think about neurological coherence, but it's actually bigger than that. It's the neurobiological coherence of all of those cells and organs all doing their dances and their things, the energetic and emotional coherence, and then the coherence with the all that is. And that's the more complete and holistic understanding of the ecosystem of self and the journey of autoimmunity, the journey of humanity, honestly, what it is to be a human. But I think we've lost a lot of that with modern society, having us live in ways and think in ways that we feel like we're on our own. We live in little suburban realities, not in community in the way that we were really designed, not in nature in the way that we were designed.
Yeah. I think that that is really a root cause, is that disconnection from community. But but even more so disconnection from the earth and the natural cycles of the earth. And so modern society is so normal to us. I mean, we haven't ever lived any other way, most of us,
Mhm.
that come from a city or an urban area. Unless you grew up more in the woods, you might be outside, but you weren't really connecting with nature in the same way, right? We have modern indoor lighting. We have
Mhm.
walls around us. We have shoes on every time we're outside. It was very recently for me that I realized that that is actually an issue that is directly impacting this coherence within my body.
Absolutely. We just talked right before we started this recording as well about that. I just moved out of Southern California. I've lived in Southern California my whole life. When I was a kid, I had some anxiety and depression kind of stuff. I really grew up with quite a lot of challenge, but I also did a tremendous amount of healing. So I've been on a healing journey and on a consciousness exploration journey, physically, emotionally, and spiritually for 30 years. So I came to a place where I didn't have anxiety anymore. I didn't have depression anymore. And I was so excited for that. I still had some health challenges, but when they started to put in 5G cell towers, I didn't put this together for the first several years. I started to experience anxiety again.
Mm.
And so most big cities have 5G cell towers, and most people live in big cities. And most people don't know that dirty electricity in their home, Wi Fi fields, cell phone fields, all this electro smog can impact, and I think it especially impacts people with autoimmunity. I feel like that autoimmune folks tend to be more energetically and emotionally sensitive, more designed for intuition, and therefore more fried out by all of the the crud that's just it's a part of every moment of reality. And so it's that toxin that you take in that you don't necessarily know you're taking in, and you don't know what it's like to be away from. So when I just moved up here to Northern California, I'm looking out my window to the land that we caretake and live on here, and we've got this beautiful cedar wood, forest. And it's a very different experience of my own body and my own health up here than when I travel to the big cities. And since I live the majority of the time here, I'm super blessed to have had that opportunity. I feel like I get to have that break and my body can handle it better when I go to the big cities again. But I definitely have felt such a huge difference. And so, living with nature and living closer to the land, it may not be available for everyone, but it's actually available much more so than it was maybe 10 years ago, because a lot of us can be working online and actually have more option in that regard. But if not, we also have availability to change how much electropollution and how much overwhelm that there is inside of cities if we're paying attention. So, creating that inside of homes in big cities is still available.
And what ways or methods do you recommend people look into? Because I know there's super pricey ways, there's, scrappy ways that we can sort of help to block some of that Wi-Fi and at least make our homes a little bit more safe in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the really high-end grounding sheets or grounding mats, it's not going to block the field, but it does bring earth energy straight into your bed all night, and that's a relatively inexpensive and sometimes really life-changing thing to do. I would say that some people would get into doing paint and things like that. Some people just have a switch that they turn off their Wi-Fi, although depending on where we live, we might have 15 other people's Wi-Fi kind of coming in at the same time. Um, but there's even like some like a bed tent or like a kind of a thing like that you can put over your bed that basically creates a Faraday cage. And a Faraday cage doesn't allow in any of those signals. So again, it's not super inexpensive, but for those that want to try that, it might be totally worth it. And, purchase one, see how it works, return it during the return window if it doesn't make a difference. But people might notice deeper quality of sleep or having less inflammation kind of symptoms in their body with something as simple as that. Because essentially the body is finally given that chance, that opportunity to fully rest and repair. And even if it's only during sleep, it makes a huge difference.
I mean, we sleep for ideally around 8 hours, 7 to 9 hours a day. So if we can ground and minimize the the EMFs during that time, I mean, that's huge.
It
That's when our
is.
bodies are regenerating. That's like where the biggest healing takes place is while we're sleeping.
Yeah, totally. And when I travel, even though I might look a little silly based on the weather, I actually, when I'm on the airplane and things like that, I put on an EMF blocking beanie, just like a hat. Or they also sell caps, right? Because our brain is especially sensitive to the solar radiation of being up that high in the sky, the all the lighting. There's huge amounts of electromagnetic fields inside of airports. So, just really taking that opportunity. People can wear clothing. You can buy, I don't have more than just the beanie, but they sell full outfits of it. So, depending on how sensitive someone is, I've even heard of somebody finding an EMF blocking throw blanket, and they just put that over the top of their bedding at night. And so that's not something that I've tried yet, but I mean, it sounds brilliant. I think it's a great
Right.
idea. Yeah.
Love it. So you were talking about people with autoimmune conditions, and I think the majority of people that have autoimmune conditions are women.
Yeah.
So we'll maybe speak to that level, but uh, that they are more sensitive, highly sensitive, maybe blocking out their natural intuitive abilities. I'd love to dive into that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just as background, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I've been in practice for 23 years. And as soon as I started my practice, I realized that I was massively intuitive, but I didn't know it before then. And actually, up until about age 18 or 19, I was an atheist. And so I was completely blocking any of these constructs of being interconnected or that there was a higher power or that somebody, something bigger than me was looking out for me. Um, and so I feel like that I'm a great case study in all of that. And also just that, not everybody can realize that they are intuitive beings because it's been very much conditioned out of our society to believe that that's real or to put priority or any level of importance on being intuitive um, because we've been so much about the rational mind. And within cultures and societies, in that are more indigenously connected or were once more connected to the land and indigenous ways of being, women were definitely heralded as having a huge amount of intuition, even amongst, all folks. It's in a lot of the Native North American traditions, they would take problems that the nation, the Native American nation was having to first the elders. And then if the elders didn't know the answer, they would bring it to the women who were having their moon cycle, their menstruation. And that's because they were looking for those answers that were beyond, and they knew that women had that gateway. We have the womb of creation. We bring life into the planet. There's so much that moves through us as women that is so extraordinary and different. And, I really believe that autoimmunity in women is often the case of living outside of that intuitive, predisposition and shutting it all down. A lot of the times, however it gets there, nature or nurture, we shut it down and then we go into suffering. And then the suffering makes it feel like the intuition is, kind of the frivolity or maybe something that's not so important if we get into deep survival mode kind of feelings. And at the same time, the intuition is the very thing that can help to guide someone on, finding that next doctor or health provider. Maybe it's figuring out what they should eat or not eat, being intuitively led down that healing path, but also just maybe opening up this giant reservoir of feeling and knowing and being able to exist in a deeper level. Because just like we've all been kind of conditioned to electrosmog, we've also been conditioned to a very superficial level of connection with ourselves and each other. And I would say that's a huge level of toxic burden that we don't necessarily think about and talk about societally.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. There's so much, I think, especially in current day. I mean, politics are going crazy, right? Like it's so us against them. And that does not encourage community. That does not encourage that intuitive, heartfelt space of what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
It's very in your head. Logically, I think that this person's wrong or that person's wrong, but what's going on underneath that? Like, that's where we find the answers.
It is the answers for our health, for our well-being, and also for society. Yeah, if we pull off into camps of red and blue, for instance, and try to pick sides and have fights over what has nothing to do with politics, like the safety and well-being of people and nature and animals, and it's like this doesn't maybe rather than picking sides and being engaged in a fight either with each other or inside of ourselves, right? Some people are not yelling at anybody, but they're yelling internally at someone. They're watching news, they're taking all of this in, and they're feeding on their own toxicity internally, even if they're not putting that out there in the way that they're talking, right? They're
Yes.
creating more fear and division inside of them, and then they're wondering why they're not happy, fulfilled, and feeling healthy,
Yes.
right?
Yeah. I my deep my deep wish, or my deep mission, I should say, with what I'm doing with coaching and helping women with autoimmune take a more empowered role in their health is that I see what's going on out in the world. I feel that the sicker we are, the less we can contribute and make change to the things that we see out there that we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
So the only way we can affect change outside of us is by creating change inside of us. So if I want to make a difference in my community, or, on the national level, on the worldwide level, how can I do that when I don't have the physical energy or the mental capacity to do so? So where do I need to start? I need to start building my own self up. I need to start learning how to tap into that intuition to figure out my own health, or
Mm-hmm.
find practitioners that can help me so I can build myself up. When I do that, I can contribute more to just my family, my close friends. And from there, that has the ripple out effect, and we can stand up more and have a bigger voice in our community and on the bigger scale.
Yeah.
So that's my deep, deep, passion for what I'm doing here.
It's beautiful. It's so spot on. I would say that I am right now healthier than I've been in my entire life. My story of illness and autoimmunity started at 2 weeks old, and just went all the way through. Um, but where I stand right now is healthier than I've ever been, and it's been for months. And I had kind of a dramatic and deeper realization of the truth that's basically what you're pointing at right now, but it's maybe even drawn another step deeper. It's like this. It's like, okay, wait a minute. I'm actually put here on this planet for a reason. And if I'm not acting in the fullest capacity, in my fullest expression for that, then what I'm noticing is that I'm sick. If I would draw the parallels, it's not just like moments of trauma and unresolved baggage, because I cleared that, but it's also how brave am I being to speak the truth, to live the truth, to be a beacon of light, which can feel like a big juxtaposition when you don't feel good and you don't even want to get out of bed because you don't feel good. But it's actually a deeper rally cry, I think, than, hoping to have a good day is not really, I mean, we should have bigger ambitions than that. And even if having a good day feels far away, I think there's a come what may factor. Come what may, I'm going to figure this out. Come what may, I'm going to live into exactly why I came to this planet at this time. Come what may, I'm asking for and receiving help and support from all dimensions, all helpers, healers, messages that may be coming to me. I refuse to be inside of the ego trap of the identity of being a person that has autoimmunity and is sick. I now choose to overcome that. And it's not future tense and it's not maybe. It's really taking self-authorship for our reality. We are not victims of our body. We are not victims of this world. And we are here to be change agents. And how we get there absolutely is by getting ourselves well. But how do we get ourselves well? It's not going to be, I'm a doctor of Chinese medicine. I prescribe supplements. I help people with nutrition. I actually do really advanced neurosciences work. That's awesome. Biggest thing that we could ever do is adjust this perspective. If we are a victim on any level, our body is going to speak to us. And if we're not living out the fullest expression, our body is going to speak to us. So what do we need to say? How do we need to act? What relationship boundaries do we need to reset? Are there toxins in our lives in the ways that we're just perceiving ourselves and our reality around us? That's the ground, like that's the foundational stuff. That and eating clean, getting enough sleep, that by itself is, I would say, 80 or 90% of it, honestly. And people can get confused into thinking that something, some pill, even if it's a natural pill, outside of them is the solution. But if it was that easy, it would have already been done by now.
Yes. Yes. Yes to everything you just said. You're so speaking my language. I've come to realize that symptoms, feeling symptoms, having a diagnosis is, and it's an invitation from your body to get to know yourself on a deeper level. What am I not, what don't I know about myself? What am I, for example, I've been having some digestive issues that I can't quite get under control. So what am I not digesting in life?
That's right.
Like, what else is there that I'm not seeing?
That's right.
Really quick, Holly B here. I just wanted to interrupt the podcast to ask you for a quick favor. Can you take just a moment to like and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you are listening in on? It makes a world of a difference in the reach of this podcast. It takes like literally under 10 seconds. So go do that right now. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And now back to the episode.
Yeah, and that digestive center is actually our solar plexus chakra. And the solar plexus chakra is about self-love. So it could be digesting, but it could also be, am I loving myself enough? Am I empowered enough? That's that same chakra. And are my boundaries clear? Because digestive process is essentially one of boundaries. We are to absorb the right stuff and eliminate the rest of it. And if we're reabsorbing our toxins through a leaky gut syndrome, which I would say is huge for almost all autoimmune, then probably there's a leaky boundary system that needs to be seen in how we have our relationships with others. Women, again, not all autoimmunity is women, so it's also with men, but just the way that women are raised and the way that kind of all of us are raised is to be nice, to take care of everything, to take care of everyone, and it's not actually appropriate or healthy. And for some of us, we, I believe, have chosen to kind of download into this body. Again, we're a soul, right? So this isn't, what is it that the learning is on a soul level is often a really helpful perspective when we can't figure out how to get the body to heal. So on a soul level, why did I download into, why am I here inside of this holy body temple who is not betraying me right now, but who is helping me to understand how I am to live my life? And yep, other people get to eat crappy food and have crappy relationships and do whatever they do in their lives, and that has nothing to do with me and what it is that I said I would do, who it is that I said I would become, why I came here in this lifetime, and taking the full ownership of that and listening and building that bridge to highest self or the real reason for being here at this time. Those are some huge places to discover and uncover. And when you become empowered at that level, to bring it back to that solar plexus chakra, which is kind of at the bottom of the rib cage, upper abdomen, when we bring it to that, then we become empowered to steer our lives from that more of a deeper soul perspective. And sometimes that's where the puzzle pieces lie, that we can't solve the riddle of what's going on with the body or our lives, or why are we not fully happy, or whatever the thing is, without those bigger perspectives, without that soul level perspective. So that's something that I think, we all can be empowered to do. And just watching the story that we can easily slip back into about health. And it's like, okay, yes, body is doing this right now. I'm feeling like this. That's in some ways very real. And I'm not saying don't get medical care, by the way, like be responsible, but there's this underlying dialogue and journey that wants to be followed about how to unravel it from its core. And I'm so excited to be at a place in my journey where I can even more clearly speak to that. I've been teaching about this and knowing this all these years, but it took me a while. So hopefully this conversation and these understandings now given in a quick format will help so many people, the listeners, really be able to move through that more quickly and efficiently and get support from people who aren't helping to further. Because I think a lot of the times if they reach out to people who help with coaches, for instance, or with psychologists, it can accidentally reinforce the pain and struggle paradigm because we overly identify with the label versus decide that we're doing something different with our lives. Yeah.
There's at least 5 different topics I want to branch out on for everything you just said. But I too have had a very long journey. I too have, it's been a little over 20 years now that I've been trying to figure out my own health journey and how to move through this. Again, part of my mission is to shorten that distance from start to like understanding for people because it shouldn't take us 20 years. And I'm fully acceptance of the fact that that was my journey to take. It was supposed to take me this long, and I still have, plenty of more to go. It's an unlayering, along the
Yeah.
whole way. But I was laughing to myself when you said, I've been teaching and speaking to these things for a long time, but that doesn't always mean that we fully get it, not cognitively, but in our bodies and our hearts and in the way we take care of ourselves on a daily practice. And I can also totally relate to that. You were speaking to like making changes and how recognizing that, okay, other people can eat their junk food and have junk relationships, but that's not for me anymore. Again, one thing to recognize that consciously, another thing to put that into practice. And I remember we were talking before the show about, or before we recorded about going gluten free.
Oh, yeah.
And you said you fought it for 5 years, and I I didn't fight it for that long, but I did keep putting off my start date because I was like, oh, I need to have that thing one more time and that thing one more time. And I was working at a restaurant at the time, and we had this beautiful baked brie that was wrapped in a puff pastry with garlic and basil in there. I had that, I think, 3 days in a row before I went gluten free. I remember buying a party size box of Cheez Its and just hoarding the whole thing. I was like, I'm going all out.
Yeah.
Common.
And or it can be. And I feel like so I went gluten-free probably close to 15 years ago. And nobody was really gluten-free or talking about it back then. And I don't today I don't eat gluten-free products very much. I just don't eat grains because that's how I feel best. But really, for myself, what I realized was I was having a pity party. I didn't want to be gluten free. I was stamping my foot and having a tantrum. There's so many things that we can really get worked up about. But then what I realized, because I would go gluten free for periods of time and then I would begin back, is how much it clouded my ability to be clear, how much it impacted my relationships because it created more emotionality because I just didn't feel well, and how much it was basically impacting me and my ability to be able to really accomplish the mission of what I've come here to do. It's like, oh, do I want my third eye to work well so that I can really serve? Or do I want to eat this piece of cake or something, right? This slice of bread. And so for me, I realized that I was making a choice that I wasn't willing to sacrifice. Are my values about eating certain foods, or are my values about serving? Are my values about love and connection? And I knew what my answer was, and that really helped me to get through it. But yeah, and for me, I was actually even in my mid-20s when I started in my practice, I was very clear that what I was teaching to folks was real, and I was getting all these amazing results for people. And I've actually been able to heal up so many big names. I had chronic fatigue or Epstein-Barr syndrome. I had Lyme disease. I've had all kinds of stuff. Severe asthma, severe allergies that were debilitating, like took 10 or 15 IQ points off of my everyday function kind of allergies, which is another version of autoimmunity, right? So I'd been able to heal up a lot of these names. I had ovarian cysts. I mean, the list goes on and on. I made a list one time in my journal of all the things that I had healed that were supposed to be not healable. And I'm like, yes, look at me go, right?
That's awesome.
But for me to be able to say, hey, every day I wake up and my blood sugar is feeling regulated, I have lots of clean burning energy. I feel empowered. I feel capable. I just don't have a lot of these like niggling symptoms anymore that I used to have, is such a blessing. I don't have the digestive symptoms anymore. And it's been, and hey, maybe life will humble me and I'll have them a year from now, but I know what to do. I know that it means dig deeper into this process that we're describing. It doesn't mean look for another supplement, right? And I think, one of the things when you were speaking about your experience of going gluten-free, I think another one that was occurring to me was a lot of the times there's obviously the empowerment piece that we've been talking about, but it's also about safety. And so this is where histories of trauma, whether they're big traumas or like they call them the little t traumas, where we just didn't feel all the way emotionally and energetically safe or seen, or, just the slight little things that can really add up, especially if we kind of acknowledge this important and intrinsic part of us that's intuitive, and the ways that we've maybe been shamed and shut down and are subconsciously pushing all of that away. When we get into safety, the body feeling safe is massive. And I would say that it's another key element of all of this, the deep getting through autoimmunity is about safety in all ways.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I agree. And what I've recognized in myself is I think there's just an accumulation. I should back up. Most things we know are rooted in childhood from 0 to 7, right? Those tend to be the traumas or the experiences that shape our patterns as we move forward and grow up into adulthood. And I don't, I had a good childhood, right? There wasn't anything major that stuck out.
Mm-hmm.
So just a few things that I've kind of keyed in on that would be considered those little t traumas, things that I wouldn't really think much of if somebody told me they experienced it, right? But those things can really take root and grow and grow and grow. And you have no idea when you're an adult and you're like, why am I struggling with X, Y, or Z? You don't know how to trace it back. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you help people walk kind of through that process? I know you do a lot of the neuroplastic or neuroplasticity reprogramming. Um, and there are ways to do that on the high end. There are ways to do that, at home through meditation.
Mm-hmm.
What do you recommend people to how to learn about that if they haven't heard about it, and B, how to kind of start that process? Because I think it can be that thing that takes us into, oh, the root causes of my autoimmunity, of my symptoms, are actually neuroplastic, not
Right.
necessarily something that's something fundamentally wrong with the way my body functions physically.
Yeah, I love that. It's not something fundamentally wrong with me.
Yes.
It's actually something that I haven't discovered yet about myself. So as more safety and more empowerment come through, that's where we actually figure out the truth of who we are. And so I will go to your question about the neuroplasticity, but first what I wanted to say is that the safety of living full force, the safety of being unleashed, the safety of being, a lot of the times we're subconsciously or subtly being caught inside of these power struggles within ourselves that says it's not safe to speak the truth. It's not safe to be a strong, empowered person who is a change maker. So I love it that you did not have a traumatic childhood in any big way. Like, I'm so grateful to hear that. And for people, for people of that circumstance, they may or may not feel all the way empowered to be the powerhouse that they are. And so that gap is a really important one to look at and close, right? I would also say that even without any traumas in this lifetime, there's often epigenetics, so things that our families and our ancestors experienced that get translated, especially if our mothers were under a lot of duress when we were in utero, but it can actually be passed through multiple generations, and that's been scientifically understood for some time now. But there's also the idea of past lives. So for those that believe in, reincarnation, which I certainly do. I did not always, but I do now. You can understand that a trauma that you hold on a soul level, that you understand and remember, you may be recreating kind of energetically inside of yourself, and that matters as well. So, and then, regardless of where the feeling of trauma or safety comes from, whether it's this lifetime and, obvious trauma, past lives, epigenetics, whatever it exists as a neurological signature. So everything that we experience as our reality has a way to be mapped and understood into the brain on a neurological level. My colleague that I work with, Dr. Drew Pearson, can look at someone's EEG, which is the electrical study of their brain, and tell them kind of everything about them without ever understanding. He doesn't even have to have ever chatted with this person, done a health history intake, and he can say, oh, you have an unresolved mother wound. And I can see that because of what's going on in this Brodmann area. Or I can see that you tend to think and overthink and spend 30% of your neurological energy overthinking, but specifically overthinking about yourself, versus the brain also shows up differently if it's overthinking about how the world is going, right? So we hear about the vagus nerve, and we hear about the amygdala. We hear about these elements of the brain. There's actually so much to it. Our ability to decide what is important or not important, it's mapped on into the brain. All of the information that is being relayed, maybe not all of it, but so much of the information that's being relayed to the amygdala actually comes from the cerebellum. And the cerebellum is a structure at the back of the brain that also feeds, it's the upstream feed for the vagus nerve. But the cerebellum is absolutely like the most primitive part of our brain. It's the part that keeps our heart beating and keeps us breathing, but it also holds these subconscious patterns and sends signals to other parts of the nervous system and the brain that tell us whether we feel safe or not. So getting into these deeper parts of the old brain, the limbic system, and understanding it and repatterning it are massive. So, getting out from underneath that constant assault of the electrosmog, like I was saying, taking time for ourselves, making sure that we're not having toxins come in from relationships or from food and things like that, because those basically hold the body inside of that state of fight or flight, inside of that state of panic and trauma. But also just recognizing that we are a timeless soul on an endless journey can be a huge, huge shift, right? Living into not just the thought construct of being interconnected, but the actual feeling of it. Something that I want to make available, if people go to the website for my organization, which is called Holon, Holon, and our website is holonexperience.com. You can download a free, we'll call it a meditation. It's not actually a meditation. It's actually an energetic practice that helps us to strengthen our energy body that extends around our body so that we have an embodied experience, a trusted physiological, neurobiological shift to knowing that we are interconnected, to knowing that we are safe. So it's just a free tool that I want to offer for everybody, because we can shift with meditation. We can shift with making these decisions to live our lives differently, to think our thoughts differently. We can get off the thought addiction loop that we can be in, or just understand that we're basically potentially living hugely inside of reality, or we're hugely living inside of illusion, and shift towards a deeper and truer state of reality just by shifting our biology into a calm state and practicing and remembering that if we're not feeling really expansive and healthy and free and enlivened, that means that we have something to work with in our spiritual path. And our neurology is showing that. And how do we shift our entire neurology? How do we shift at that level? And again, I'm a full support. People need to be on medications if they need medications. They need to be on supplements. Like, I'm a big fan of making sure that we're doing things on those levels. But if this other element isn't being attended to, we're probably not going to change the tide, not in a deep way. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I think that there is an ideal space where Western and holistic work together.
Oh.
We should be working on that mind body level at the same time. Just because we're taking Western meds for our autoimmune condition doesn't mean you can't step your foot into the other side. Like, it all works together. And the more you can embrace the holistic side of things and the mindset and that perspective shift, which for me was the turning point in starting to make headway in my health and in my life, which is why, again, I coach on that first and foremost before we get into nutrition and hydration and all the other things. You know, the more that you can step into that and work on that perspective while doing what you have to do on that physical level with Western medicine as well, the more you'll be able to step down from the Western medicine.
Yeah.
Most likely, but that's typically what I've seen.
We have to build all the bridges first. We don't want to be irresponsible and kind of let the physical symptoms run amok or do things that aren't wise. So by no means, I think both of us we're agreeing that people should stick with their protocols that they're on, but how do we build that deeper bridge? And I think that a lot of it comes from, whoa, I'm a timeless soul on an endless journey. And I'm currently inside of a society that clearly has a lot of illusion going on, that clearly has a lot of pathology
On
going
purpose.
on.
On purpose.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. And
that's another rabbit hole we could go down or not.
exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So if I know that's the context, then I choose to see through the illusion. I choose to be in the remembrance. I choose to journal every morning. I choose to eat well. I choose to know that I am actually in charge and that I can find my way through this, that there is nothing that's been put before me that I am not here to handle, that can't be resolved, that I don't have to live inside of labels and pathology. Like, it's just being so deeply empowered and seeing through all of that is, I think, the key for all of us. And it continues to develop and grow over time. Who we need to be today is different than maybe 10 years ago, and who we'll need to develop into 10 years from now is something different. And if we're staying on track with our actual development as it's being given to us by highest self or God or however we frame it, and we're not fighting against that, then we can perhaps even be symptom-free or have a completely different experience of our body and our world. And it's not just it's not just our physical body, even though I know so many people that are struggling with autoimmunity can be so focused on that. I've been there, I know. But how is all of life going? How fulfilled, how amazing do we let it get? What do we even aim for? Because if we don't aim for it, it's probably not going to happen on accident. So, yeah.
Yes. I think we all can listen to this episode and think, yes, I love what they're saying. Like, I want to be that person. I want to step into my intuitive abilities, or I want to feel more empowered in my health journey. And then the episode ends and life starts happening again. You're stuck in the work hamster wheel. You got to get the kids to soccer practice. okay, cook dinner, shove some food in,
Mhm.
watch TV, go to bed. It's hard to start this process, but it's really simple. And I think I always say starting just aim for 1%
Mhm.
difference, 1% better each day. And
Yeah.
that can look like starting with the gratitude journal in the morning. Write
Mhm.
3 things down that you're grateful for, or, download the transcript to this podcast and pick out some of those um, lines that you were saying. I am an empowered person. I am in control of, or I don't know, I can't remember exactly what you said,
Yeah.
but
I create my own
I
reality.
create my own reality. Exactly.
Mhm.
Write some of those things down that hit you kind of that you felt in your body,
Mhm.
and write those down in your journal. Say
Yeah.
them to yourself in the morning and at night before you go to bed, and you can start there.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. I know that I'm either, when I speak about this, I know that I'm either saying exactly the thing that is a soothing, healing balm to the person, or they're pissed off at me. And I
Yes.
completely understand both ends of that perspective. Right. But rather than um, fighting against what is like, hey, I've got these health challenges. Hey, gluten's not for me. Hey, I need to get my life in order. It's like rather than fighting against that, which if autoimmunity is about a fight against oneself, probably not a good strategy. What about if we just take all of that fire, all of that, like, screw you, I'm really actually sick? It's like, yeah, I've been too. As a single mom, I couldn't get out of bed for a month. And I had just basically had this massive career shift and had to start over financially, emotionally, and physically. That wasn't that long ago. That was in my early 40s. So I know what it's like to struggle, and I don't say any of this flippantly. And it can be, okay, fine, let's start with 1%. Like, let's put the gratitudes in the journal, right? And so sometimes the physical change or the 3D world change about how we actually move through our lives, what we eat, how we conduct ourselves takes longer to implement. And the diligent investment for the long game on that is the win, right? Because we have to be able to do all of what we need to do sustainably. So if that's what it looks like, or that's great. But I would say that the thing that's underneath that you have the ability, that everybody has the ability to do today, is to be really freaking determined and not fight against oneself, but just say, all right, so I've been given this challenge. I've been given this challenge and I'm going to overcome it.
Hey, I just wanted to jump in here and interrupt the program for just a hot minute. You know that I'm so passionate about this podcast, but what I'm also really passionate about is helping women with lupus minimize their symptoms, boost their energy so that they can indulge in life again. So if you are a woman who is struggling with lupus, who is sick and tired of being sick and tired, who's struggling to manage your flares, if you're finding that your lupus symptoms are just really getting in the way of you being able to live your life the way you want to, I feel you. I've been there myself and I felt the same way. And what I've found is that there are a certain set of health fundamentals that once applied, will support you in your foundational health. They will support you in building and maintaining that energy, minimizing flares, and allowing you to, again, indulge in life and follow your passions. So, if that is something that you are interested in creating for yourself, let's jump on a call together. I will walk you through the process that I use with my clients to get them from sick and tired to strong foundation of health by implementing my Health Bridge protocol. If this is something you're interested in chatting more about, I would love to talk to you. Apply for a free clarity call with me, and I look forward to getting to know you soon. And now back to the episode.
And I don't know all the answers right now. I work in my practice at this point. I work with peak performers, executives, pioneers, and visionaries that fly in from around the world, and they come and do our programs on site, or they work with me online on coaching. And these are people that want to have action plans They want to be successful. They are driven. They've already created an empire. And then they'll say to me, how do I do what it is you're talking about? It could be about health, or it could be about any area of their life. And what I'll tell them is the same thing that I would say to your audience. Do not be so convinced that it is exactly about the how, but that it is more about that determination underneath. Because there is no secret recipe that exists for this path. Each of us are on an exquisitely unique journey through a human experience as a timeless soul on an endless journey, currently incarnated in the here now, in a male or a female body that's got whatever kind of stuff going on they've got going on in their life. So I'm sorry, there is no one that can provide an exact recipe. But there are things that help. Yes, electrosmog and nutrition and gratitude, journaling, these are all, like, by themselves, are actually massive tools. But if you don't look at that thing that's underneath that says, I, as that timeless soul on an endless journey, am here to overcome this. I'm here to learn what I am to learn, and I want to see it, and I want to know it, and I'm going to live a different reality. And I choose that, and I choose to get up every day, reinforcing that reality inside of myself. I haven't conquered this yet, but I'm going to. I'm on my way. I refuse to give up. I refuse to feel sorry for myself. That's a good one. I refuse to feel sorry for myself. Because feeling sorry for myself means that I've forgotten that I'm a timeless soul on an endless journey who is creating his or her own reality right now. And I know that I'm back in the illusion. And if I'm back in the illusion, I am fully responsible and accountable for how that goes. Okay, wait a minute. I got to back up then. I've got to remember right now, timeless soul on an endless journey. I am a powerhouse. I am capable. I am strong. I am here to learn. What is it that my body or my life is asking for me to learn? And can I be the most passionate student of that lesson so that I can master it, so that I can graduate through my life circumstances right now? Not later. If we put our deepest calling on a to-do list, we will live our whole lives and have lost sight, never have been able to step into this full expression, never been able to experience certain parts of life that are available to us. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm a single mom. I'm a CEO of a company. I have all the excuses too. And as I move through the busyness of the day, am I remembering myself in this way? Am I empowered in this way? And sometimes it can create deeper meltdowns, like, dang it, how did I end up with another week that went by and I didn't get enough sleep, or I felt this way or that. That's fine. And so then today is a brand new day. This is a brand new moment. Let's live in the moment and let's begin again. This moment is the perfect moment to remember all of it, to love myself, to forgive myself, and to be empowered to bring safety into my body inside of that remembrance of myself as that timeless soul on an endless journey.
And you can remember that multiple times a day if needed.
Totally. I like to say, how many seconds can we string together? Right?
Yes.
So we're not even making huge goals. It's like, can I do 5 seconds of remembering myself as a divine being?
Yes.
Can I remember myself to be powerful and strong? And if you forget, then you come back, but without the shame, because the shame and the guilt are so much of what it is that cycles for people with all the kind of pain that they have in their lives, whether it's health stuff or otherwise. So without the pain, maybe it's anger. It could be a nice, clean burning. I like to call it the bonfire of transformation. Like, if you're really, really, really pissed off that you forgot, do that quickly and allow it to move through. But don't be mad at yourself long term. Give yourself 5 seconds to be an emotional, and then allow for the forgiveness, that place of peace to recur, like that deep state of trust. I am authoring my reality, and I begin again right now. So that, and then the Holon breath practice that I described, that will change people all by itself. So I have seen people's lives transform by doing 5 minutes of eyes closed practice. But the beautiful thing about that practice is that we can experience it with our eyes open. And so it's there for you all day long. It's there for you anytime you need it. And it helps to restore the energy body. It helps to bring the body into a neurobiological safety, which is such a gift. And it has us remember the truth in ways that aren't logical or intellectual, but in our body, which is really the only place that it matters. Right? Otherwise, we can just torture ourselves with more intellectual truth, but not live inside of the truth. It's really tricky being a human.
Oh boy, is it. Yeah. And that's the whole point, right? Is to try to learn the intricacies of how to do it well for
Mm-hmm.
our highest and best purpose, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It makes everything you just said brings me back to the idea of taking radical responsibility for your
Mm-hmm.
life and not playing the blame and shame game.
That's
Is
right.
how I like to call it. If we stay stuck in that blame and shame cycle on ourselves, or sometimes we put that out onto others, that's not growth. That's not going to help propel us forward. That's going to keep us stuck. So see it, recognize it, and what did I learn from this? And how do
Mm-hmm.
I move forward from this? You know, taking
Yeah.
radical responsibility for choices you've made, um, consciously or unconsciously.
Yeah.
And how do I learn from this?
Yeah, I love that. That is what the radical responsibility. And I think what else that reminds me of is forgiveness. You were also speaking to that just a moment ago, right? Forgiveness of ourselves for the places that maybe we feel like we didn't act, or, we allowed somebody to do something to us, and we put ourselves in a certain circumstance, or we lived inside of illusion for so long, or there's forgiveness for self is so important with autoimmunity. But I would say also the forgiveness for everyone else. I had to work actually really hard to forgive um, the medical doctors that basically, in many ways, had so much to do with my story, because I was on antibiotics every 6 weeks to 2 months growing up. And so I never had the ability to establish really good gut flora and, all these kind of things. Um, if I had stayed inside of the anger at them, even on a subconscious level, would I be able to restore my health? Maybe, maybe not. I don't think so in my case. So how can I hold that that was an important part of my story, that, being on the steroids and all the different stuff that I was given as a kid were actually a beautiful part of my training, so that I could understand the power of natural medicine, so that I could have something so huge to overcome, so that I could help others to liberate themselves from, illusion, suffering, paradigm, physical ailments, etc. But really coming through, I think, with people who have had a lot of health challenges, coming through the health trauma is a whole nother topic. Specific hospitalizations or moments where, it's just been so overwhelming, and forgiving others for how they did or didn't show up the ways that they did, forgiving ourselves for maybe even forgiving ourselves. What about this one, for picking such a hard mission? Like, if my mission on this earth had to include all of this, like, I spent some time too in the process of like, can I just, I didn't want to pick this path. This doesn't sound very much fun, and the rebellion of all of that. And then the forgiveness and the coming into a feeling of full, rich, true gratitude, um, which doesn't come on like a light switch. It comes as a result of kind of taking and sifting through these parts of our lives, I think, and being able to forgive and come to peace and not make things right or wrong. Right? It's not right or wrong that I had that health journey or that you've had your health journey. It's what is. And when we get out of the fight of the right or the wrong, that's when we can transcend and have a different level of awareness and have a healing that is really profound. So we see that neurologically when we have people elevate their brain waves into gamma. Gamma takes these, what looks like black and white or right and wrong, or, good and bad and all of this. And it's like, oh, wait, it just is. It just is. And if we understand the reason behind all of it, then the is actually a really comfortable place. And we can move through our lives with more mastery rather than feeling like we're inside of trauma and recovery cycles and good and bad and judging. It takes a lot of energy to do it the other way. It's actually a huge amount of horsepower. Yeah.
Right. And yet we're told that it takes a lot of energy and willpower to focus on our health and to create new patterning there.
Mhm.
But in the long run, that's that's just that's just at the beginning point where you're getting the wheels turning, and then you're rolling downhill. And it makes
Right.
the rest of life so much easier.
It really does. And I know we were chatting on that, in a prior conversation as well. People will say, oh, but it's too much work to redo my nutrition and my family doesn't eat this way, or I can't figure it out. I don't have enough time. It's like, well, if you take all of the time you spend on Instagram and watching TV and all the time that you do, maybe some, whatever, and we actually assign value and importance to this, what happens is that people realize that they don't want to live without their clean diet because they feel like crap immediately. So for people that don't believe that that's a real factor, do an autoimmune paleo diet if that feels suitable and is agreeable for you and advised by your medical or health practitioners, or do something, maybe it's carnivore, maybe whatever it is, and see how it feels. Do it for 2 weeks minimum, maybe a month, whatever the nutrition changes are, and have them be deep and complete. And go ahead and have your meltdowns during it, because it is kind of hard to figure out a new way to live. It is. What do you eat when you're hungry and you aren't supposed to eat the stuff that you were eating before because you've decided you're doing something different? And do it long enough that then when you go back to what you thought you, quote, should be able to eat, like everybody else gets to eat, how do you feel? And then the reinforcement of feeling like crap after starting to feel much better, it's not hard to make the decision anymore.
Yeah.
It feels so good to feel good
Mm-hmm.
that that becomes a positive reinforcement. And, I would even say like a rat, for instance, if they eat food that is spoiled, or they realize that food from a certain location is too spoiled for them or whatever, and they end up sick, they'll never eat it again. But we, with our human minds, can maybe overthink this and or just take in so much toxicity all the time from our nutrition, that we don't know the difference. And we're thinking that we should be able to override that, or we're thinking that that's different. And it's like, no, we're actually mammals. Same as rats, same as every other creature. Dogs are the same, right? Like they will stay away. So what if we just stay away from that which is toxic and commit to making these bigger changes and commit to everything that that takes? And if you have to commit to it and then tantrum and fall off the bus and get back on it, go ahead, do it. It's moving
We've
in
all
that
been
right
there.
direction.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Exactly.
But plenty of tantrums.
I think it's part of it, right? And I think that
Yeah.
the story of empowerment is often found inside of really great tantrums, but it's not when we stay in the tantrum, it's when we pull out of that and realize that there's something more.
Yeah, absolutely. One last thing before we go. On your website, you say that the world is at an inflection point and you are here for a reason.
Yeah.
Explain inflection point and how does somebody know when they've hit that point, like in their health journey?
Oh, the health journey inflection point. Well, the inflection point that I was talking about on the website is, look, we are at a place where we may be at an extinction event.
Mm.
Okay. So we could be concerned about, are we saving enough for retirement, or did the kids get to soccer or whatever? But the truth of it is that if we don't pay attention collectively, whether it's environmental, whether it's AI, whether it's sociopolitical, like we are at a potentially massively disastrous time period. And so kind of everything that we're really wound up about, that's about I, me, mine, well, in my life, and this is what I needed, it's like, let's think about, are our children going to have a planet to survive on? And because there are certain environmental tipping points that we can't undo. It's like a string of dominoes that can't be stood back up, right? And that might be also true for some of these other major factors that are happening. So I don't speak that to put fear in, but rather let's be inside of the real picture of what's going on. So when we say we don't have time for something, it's because maybe we're creating priorities where they're not necessarily the most strategic, the most aligned, and most intuitive to what's actually happening. Like our retirement account or whether our kids make it to soccer probably doesn't matter as much as what we're doing individually and collectively in this next, especially let's say 5 years. So when I rally for all of this, the wake-up call is actually really profound, right? Like, do we choose to be inside of struggling, disconnect, illusion, or do we choose to step outside of that and become our full self, our fully expressed self that is willing to take those risks? A lot of people are putting off a career change or expressing themselves in certain ways through their work, through their families, through their friendships and communities that we actually really need. And if we don't all live into that, there's the possibility not just of health problems or short-term suffering, but also a bigger suffering. And I don't want for people to be overwhelmed by it, but rather let's look at it and let's have that help us to reset our priorities. Because I think that we've become really neurotic as a society and worry a lot about what Instagram influencers are saying versus what we know and what we could be living. What is our heart's desire that we're not expressing that is actually a tremendous gift for us to express, but also for the world to experience of us. And I think that we have everything that we need inside of us and around us to solve all of these problems. And it just takes us working together, but working together only works if we work within ourselves in the ways that we can. So that's kind of the big picture of what I'm seeing. And I want people to be out of their individual suffering in such a way that they're able to create that change with us and also be driven by a need or a desire that is bigger than themselves. Because I think for so many of us, we aren't necessarily compelled to make massive change for just ourselves, even though that maybe not be the most ideal truth. It could be true. But what we would do for our families, our children, for the well-being of nature, I think that's a bigger rally cry. And so that's what I really want people to understand, is we're in this together. We belong to each other. And we do have everything we need. We just have to remember.
We have to remember. And again, that goes back to starting within yourself.
It does.
To build up that empowerment, to build up that understanding that you are here for a reason, to make a difference, whether that's on a small family scale or on the grand world scale.
We all make a difference. Even if we don't interact with someone, the energy that we have inside of us is a part of the collective. And so are we remembering that? Are we remembering that no matter who we are, no matter what role we have, it is an important contribution? Because all of us are tapping into and feeling the collective, whether we know it or not. And we all have the ability to impact that collective as well.
I love that. Any last thoughts? It's such a great place to close, but any last thoughts for our guests? How can people find you?
Yeah, like I said, the website, we have a variety of different offerings, some of which are not as accessible, some of which are. But I do recommend exploring the website just because I think that if people have found this conversation interesting, that they'll love to see this merging, which I didn't get into as much in this conversation with you, but this merging of neurosciences and spirituality, merging the mystical and the quantifiable. And so I think that there's just a whole world there that brings that rational mind together with the intuitive and that felt sense of knowing. So I do encourage that, and also just the exploration of that. Again, we have all the answers. They're in some cases set off to the sides, pushed away into the corners. And so as we work and weave and braid these elements of science and spirituality, the mystical and the intuitive, the timelessness, that deep soul's evolution, and then also the practicality of modern life, that's really where that's where we're in the fullest remembrance. We need all of these elements. And we've needed every step of our journey, whether we've liked it or not. And to bring all of that together is what creates the unlock for us as individuals and as a collective. So I encourage everybody to keep exploring and to stay really strong and courageous inside of that desire, clear inside of that desire. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We may need to have a part two where we can get more into the spirituality and the neuroscience.
That'd be great. I'd love it.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy, so much for being here. It was such a pleasure.
You're welcome. Pleasure is mine.
If we had to boil this entire conversation down to the essence, the most important part, the most important message that Dr. Amy shared with us, it is that remembering and that acknowledgement that you are a timeless soul on an endless journey. And therefore, if that is true, then the trivialness of our day-to-day actions and decisions hold a little bit less weight, don't they? It makes making changes just a little bit easier because it helps you recognize that there is such a different trajectory here that we're talking about. I mean, the universe just expands when you think about life in those terms. What is that learning on a soul level for you that's going to shift your experience? What in this conversation struck you? What are the affirmations that Dr. Amy shared with us that you felt in your body and that you connected to? That's where I want you to focus on. That's what I want you to take away from this episode. That's where I want your starting point to be, is contemplate those things. You know, take out a journal tonight and write down some of your thoughts and your feelings and your takeaways from this episode, and keep revisiting them. And just again, think about that 1% difference, right? What is a 1% shift that I can make today? Can I take 5 minutes to just download the breath work or the breathing exercise from Holon experience? And can I just focus on that today? And I just take that 5 minutes for myself today. And how can that have a ripple effect through the rest of my day and the way I experience and move throughout my day? That's not asking you to completely change your entire nutrition. It's not asking you to change jobs and create a stress-free environment. That's simply asking you to breathe for 5 minutes and to give that as a gift for yourself, and to not get overwhelmed by all the other changes that you could be making, right? Because when it comes to health, yes, sometimes we need a major life overhaul, but that life overhaul can happen 5 minutes at a time, one food choice at a time, right? Changing one thought at a time. And over time, those things have such a profound impact on your health experience, on your life experience, that it can lead to profound changes outside of you as well, like we were talking about. So I'd like to ask you to please share this episode with someone in your life, someone special, somebody that is open to hearing the message that we share here. This is life-changing stuff. This is life-changing stuff that people need to hear. And so we're asking you to help us get our message out there so we can change more lives. And if you are ready to consider some shifts in your life and you need some guidance on how to start that process, sign up for a free call with me. Let's chat. Let's see where you're stuck. Let's see what I can offer to help you move forward. I would absolutely love to connect with you. Thank you so much for listening in, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of the Health Bridge